Alright, so this is going to be podcast number 4 for the Lasera project. So I have a video that I'm actually going to edit into this so everyone else will see it whenever I'm done. That I basically am making one of the models, or I began to work on one of the models for another, I guess, spoiler. There is one spoiler in there that you get, but just one. Um, but so far it seems great. I'm going to basically run this by it so you can see it right now, which is probably amazing because all of these ones are black. So that will be more entertaining, hopefully. Other than that, I think we should just get right into it. So, how do I do this? Let's see what to start out with. So first, actually, I want to just talk about the little model. What's going to happen in this run is basically there will be a lot of things that better Blender modelers might be able to do than I can, but honestly, I don't care. I know how to work around any problem just about in Blender, so either way, as long as it gets the job done in the end, it works. But the other problem though is by the end of it, I'm basically going to make it look a lot better. I don't want to work on any of it because I can use that as footage, so it's at least more entertaining. So if I do ever do it, then I could just film it, and then I could use that for later on, which will be great. But yeah, I'm going to do a lot of models too in the future, but I could also fill in some like gameplay or something of a game I play or something. But yes, the other thing though is this won't necessarily be for kids, as I said. It's going to be for people who can handle something or can see stuff that would be otherwise not for younger audience. So that is why I wanted to keep this entire thing as a upper field of range so that it's not necessarily wrong for me to say it's not that, although maybe the first few episodes could have easily been seen as that. Then yeah, so basically I just needed it for now, recently. Like in this one there is a little bit of a fear, I guess you could say, but it'll be later on whenever you watch the model. It shouldn't be that bad, but I mean eventually it's gonna get much worse. Probably not. I don't know. I doubt it, but it should at least have some scare factor to it. I don't want to do a whole lot of just, I don't know, just a whole lot of bad stuff, so other than that, I'm gonna stop talking about it. You'll just watch it as I'm going along. It's not very entertaining. I know it's not time-lapsed or anything. I just need to make a longer thing, and I didn't have time. As I said, I'm still doing some stuff. I'm working around some schedules, but other than that, yeah, it's just gonna have to watch at normal speed. So if I made a few mistakes, and there are also a few cuts because I didn't want to show some stuff that I was looking at, like I don't know, just spoilers, I guess. But I guess what I can talk about is just some rundown of what's to come, but no, never mind. I don't like that idea. I want to talk about the game. So okay, let's just go back to an overview of the game, or at least exactly what I want it to be. So, Lasera is about a girl whose name is Keith. She's supposed to explore this world and be a free roam sort of idea. And basically she lives within this area called the Unity, and it's a place that I still haven't decided. I'm just gonna say it's honestly the like the continent that they live on, and basically it's underground, so they're never actually gonna be above ground in this case. But um, I was thinking about showing that towards maybe the end or like whenever the final thing, but they'll basically have a human, so it's not that long ago that they have seen the light. It's been about like 300 years, so there's not anything different very much. But the thing is I have a backstory for all of that. I'm not gonna get into because it would be spoilers, but again, yeah. So basically, it will take place in like caves and big, huge, and each cave will be like several thousands of feet high. It will be so big, and so that basically there will be airships and things like that. Of course, there's still the problem with light, but I have a little bit of a workaround for that, which is usually like glowing mushrooms or glowing weeds or vines or something growing along the sides, so that basically you can start seeing the environment and how it looks like upwards. And the other thing is I wanted to make the caves look really big because I wanted to show exactly how big you can make a world. I wanted it to basically show how small you truly are in this game, because without that idea, I think it basically limits the idea behind a lot of this, because there is going to be a lot of big things in here. I want to cover a lot of things, I want to go through a lot of things, and I want to just make as much content or whatever I have to do in order to make this successful. Or not even successful, I really just kind of doing this for myself. Um, but, I guess the other thing though that I wanted to talk, what is it, overview, is basically I wanted the game to be in 3D. I mean, you can kind of figure that out from the model, but I wanted 3D versus 2D because I feel 3D has a certain aspect to it that gives it a certain feel, and that it kind of shows more realism, as well as it doesn't limit down to 4 movements of direction, up, down, left, and right. Rather, you can go in several directions, actually. And I think that's a lot more interesting than a 2D world. The big problems, though, is when you do that, it basically allows players to have problems with camera controls and other things like that. Usually movement will be a reference to the direction they can move, and sometimes it can make things like climbing make it very difficult, because up would be down and down would be up, or it would be sideways sometimes. But I think that a 3D world also gives the player more free roam, and it gives them a lot more choices than a 2D world, because you're not going left and right or up or down. You're always going usually anywhere you want. Like any RPG really has a world that's just huge and expansive, and they have all these little tiny mechanics that just makes it so much better, rather than a platformer where you can't see as much emotion and stuff. I mean, you could, but it's still limited down to a certain degree, and there's not like a way of making it more realistic. It kind of disengages the player. Um, I think the fact that 3D also can be a more challenging, I guess, is that usually 3D worlds have a harder time getting a cartoony look, which is kind of the field that I want to go for as well. Because what will happen is, whenever you're in 2D world, you can make each pixel and like shade it very, very easily. Whereas in a 3D world, it's not as easy to shade because it's not one area of light. So if it was like directly above, or let's say to the right or to the left, well, those are consistent lighting. Well, in a 3D world, not everything's going to look consistent. It's going to have darker areas, it's going to have brighter areas, so things won't look as great. But there is a way of working around, and that's using colors and shading. But I think there is an important factor in using colors to an extent that shouldn't be the primary focus. It should have still that idea of simplicity behind it, but also a complex thing, but not for things that abstract the view. So, for instance, if you were in a boss fight, you were going against some giant beast, well, you don't want to be distracted or usually taken in by other things while you're fighting it. You want to be taken in things after that, or while you're running away. You usually don't want to do that, though, because then that gives a lot of just rush, and it kind of helps like make you feel and like notice a lot of things at once. Um, but still, I kind of like the idea of like a casual, but also kind of a hardcore if you wanted to. Um, I think that because I want people taking the environment if they want to, whereas they can also be like people who can run and beat it and do whatever they want as slow or as fast as they can. I want also difficulty to be changed interchangeable throughout the entire game, and that might be a little bit harder because I think what I want to do, or at least try to do, is basically have it to where instead of what a lot of coding does, where they basically give it more damage or more health, there are some games that don't, but a lot of games usually increase only damage and health for the enemies, or lower your health, or lower something about you. That usually takes away some things, and I always like the idea of giving, because giving always makes people feel more accepted and more appreciated. Because, say if I gave you a hardcore and it was really hard, it took you all night, well, if that does happen, then it will get like very, very annoying at one point, because there's no reward. Like, what are you even going for? Why even go forward and move and progress? There would be no point. So I think that there should be a reward if it is higher, but I also want enemies to also react in a different way. So if it was hardcore, they would basically start realizing your movements based on an algorithm or something. So if you started going a lot more left than right, it would basically start learning that, and it would like roll away, or it would have different sprites and attacks that it could use in hardcore. But that also kind of makes it kind of different from casual, because casuals also want to like envelop it, and they want to experience everything. So that's the other thing. I could also speed up some things as well to make it harder, but also the same amount. This just would be easier to dodge or something. But I'm still figuring out that kind of aspect, and where to balance it. Um, I guess. Oh boy. I guess the next aspect that I could be talking about is exactly the type of kind of game I want to basically make the player why they should play the game in the first place. So the idea of progression, why should you get rewards and keep going? So first off, I will say free roam versus, I guess, path-based. I like the idea of free roam a lot because it gives the player the idea of taking in everything, and it gives them a lot cooler views. But I also don't like that mode because usually it leads people to have to follow arrows or certain things that are far away, and it kind of like takes it away. So I don't want to take away stuff, but then I don't want to take away from other people that want to go there faster. They want to do stuff a lot better. So I do like, in this instance, fast travel, because then, although it may be not as cool for some people, it's because of fast travel, and that they would probably more enjoy the scenery and the tiny details. Those people still, it's kind of hard for it to realize. I guess you could like tell them, but even then, I want it for like people who are trying to like speed run or something like that, or want to enjoy the game in the way they see it. And also cutscenes. If there was cutscenes, then you also want to skip it after the first run, or even the first very run. You want to skip them. I think that that should be an option. no matter how much I take in, it should always be about the experience that you have away. It shouldn't be about my views or any ideas that I have to be pushing on you, because then that really just gives my thought, and it's not exactly what people want to experience. They want to experience their vision of it. And I think that's perfectly fine. I think I love that idea. But so yeah, I'm more lenient towards free roam, but I also like some of path-based. If there was a tutorial or something like that, I also want it skippable, and I want to just warn people a little bit. I just want to make like one box or something that says if you skip this, then, so it's not as bad, but I don't want to also pop it up. I would think it should be an option in settings where it says, don't put on a tutorial or something, so it skips all of that. I think that should be a thing. Just because, as well, you don't want to sit through all of that again and again and again. Some people do, but that's their choice, and yeah, they can do that easily and all the time. For the people who are interested in more of the story, though, I can't guarantee any quality any better than I can do. I don't think people will enjoy it as much. I don't think that I can make a great story for this. As I said, I want to try the best I can to even make something. I do have quite a bit of story for it, but at least for the main quest, there are some side quests and stuff that I do have as well. Just in case I want to do something similar to that. But, yeah, I want people to enjoy it in the way they want it. So, I guess, I don't know, I can't really say whether they're gonna be good or whether they're gonna be bad, and I want it to be enjoyable for all things, so there should be like an option where you can skip missions, but then it's also the idea of like, how would you go about it? Because then you could just give them the reward. Or you could say that you have to go to a certain location and make it a different mission. That would also be kind of cool, because I know a lot of people don't like escort missions, because usually you have to worry about the person you're escorting and them dying, which is a big problem, because then that can be very annoying after playing again and again and losing or winning. Either way, it would just be repetitive again and again. And if people don't enjoy it, why let them go through it? So, if there is any way that I can go around it while also including something like that, because it would be story based if I had something annoying, then I would do that. I would make it an option. But if I can't, I'd rather take away something story mode and make it more enjoyable rather than have it like that. If you do care about the story, then I'm very sorry about that, but it would be a sacrifice I would have to make in order to make it better. What else can I talk about? There will be certain like changes in regions, I guess, for different characters and different people. So there will be some sort of idea of like races and classes and stuff, because I want people to basically have a world that is alive. So some people may interact differently if you go here, or some people may hate this race for some reason, or they may hate this class, or some people over here might be a cult of wizards, whereas another area could be bandits or something. I also like the idea of choice in the matter, so if you wanted to be a bad person, you easily can. I don't think that it should be an unlimited amount of, for instance, guards. I don't think that that should be a thing, because then it's not necessarily fair, but it kind of limits it in the way you can do it, because if, several guards or police or whatever keeps coming after you over and over and over again, it doesn't allow you to be bad. It allows you to just do it the way it wants it to, which is limiting. I want some different weapons. So if every type of weapon you want to use, I want it to be real time. It's not going to be like a chance where it's like 50% or something. It can be like criticals as well. I don't mind that. I don't mind enchantments or like fire damage or something like that. But yeah, I don't like, so basically, for each like weapon type, so basically if you're like a heavy class, I want several weapons as well for that. I don't want to limit anybody. And if there was ever a final tool or final weapon or final gear or final ore that you get, I want every type of it, every type of like weapons to be an option up there. Every single type. If I make something that's magic based and it was like a little tiny orb or a flute or something that you could like fly around and it would point wherever you're going and then you would just click and then it would fly there. I think something like that would be at the very end as well. Also like some sort of healing as well. Some sort of like healing magic should be at the end, or if you are into like heavy classes, then I believe that there should be huge swords for you. And then I think that if it was in the final area, it should have like two options for each. If there was several types of weapons that a person would like, then they could have, you know, this weapon or this weapon, and then it would be a balance of that. But also between the game, I also want a lot of weapons and a lot of different varieties, so that you're not just stuck on one class. If you want, you can go to several other classes. Um, so whenever you do that, I think it should just be allowed, and I want more weapons and magic than towards the end, as I said, like much more. Because I also want to experiment with some things. I want to also advance myself in the way of figuring stuff out, so I could make a better weapons and things that I would have never made. Like instead of just making swords again and again, um, I could make something that changes something into something else, or I could make like a house out of nowhere, or I don't know, just something that challenges it. Um, what else? What else? Um, I guess there is some other ideas that I have for it. Um, as I said, I do want regions and other things, so I also like the idea of flora and fauna being different. Um, Again, I also have to think about how I want to do lighting, even though I have a little bit of a workaround, because I know dark areas are meant for usually scare or fear, but and plus it's also very frustrating, and I think there should be an option to also turn up gamma or any brightness. I think several different options. I have to think about settings and what should be interchangeable between settings, and then also it has to be formatted so that a lot of people can easily navigate it and then not be overwhelmed by so much. There's not a whole lot of like creatures or things I want to go into about this one. I really want to just go into the overall, because I've been needing to do that and I didn't do that. What I mean by overall is nothing lore based or anything like that. Nothing that's going to necessarily be of great importance, I guess. Or so basically, I don't want to go into like specific weapons, or I don't want to go into how some things will be affected. I want to talk about like generalized ideas in this. So, I still am coming up with a lot of story and some ideas for this. I also like the idea of currency in a game, because that gives a lot of interesting things. I also like the idea of trading, so instead of, you know, trading for gold, you could trade, I don't know, 5 sheep or something, and like, I think that there should be some sort of like charisma as well. I think there should also be some sort of skill tree, because I do like the idea of upgrading and just becoming the best you can be over anyone else in the land. I always like that idea. Um, what else can I say? I think the way that you control players or characters, um, because I'm thinking about having multiple characters instead of just one. I do have one specific one, her name is Case, as I said, but I'm thinking about other ones that you want to care about, or people who like the story actually will say and talk about. Um, and then I want different outcomes, like I said, so if you wanted to work for Lasera or something like that, you could, and then the whole gameplay would change, but then you could also, backstab it and then go that route. I think that would be very interesting, but that's going to take quite a long time. Just by myself at least. I do like um, the idea of, I guess I could say like why I chose some things. Like for example the theme and how it's medieval sort of steampunk. I like I like different ideas that aren't as common. I know medieval is pretty common, but steampunk isn't as common, and I just like the idea that everything has a pipes and it has steam, and it's sort of like this idea of industrialization. It's sort of like a lost fragment in our own time, actually, is how I kind of perceive it. Because it seemed like that during the Industrial Revolution. This is at least an American. I know it's all over the world, but in this case, I'm talking about American. But it was this idea that everything was going towards steam, everything was being processed as steam, and we didn't really go into that very much. We had boats and trains and other things that relied on steam, but then all of a sudden, other ways that of producing power came into being, and it kind of just stopped really quick. There, you could see sort of during the early 1900s and the 18th century, or the 19th century, sorry. You can see that sort of idea that was missing, but it just kind of went, and I like the idea that it was something that could have been. It's something that we could have changed entirely about the way we see things. I doubt in any way that they would have ever gone that way, but it still would have been cool to the idea that it was. You can also see it in way before with Leonardo da Vinci and his designs. I do like that. So it's like this idea that it was always there, and we were always thinking about a way to do that, but it just never happened, and we kind of skipped over that. Um, but medieval, I also like the idea of the way it's set up and the way that there's an empire or a king or a monarchy, and it's the idea of feudalism. Um, I like that very idea, and then medieval also has some great architecture and things about it that a lot of people overlook. For instance, you could say like medieval armor. A lot of people say that it takes several thousands of pounds, or not thousands of pounds, but it takes hundreds of pounds, and it's very it exerts a lot of weight. Or no, that's not exactly what I'm saying. So basically, they can't do a lot of functions with armor on, and I like the idea that um, the armor is not actually that way in real life. It's actually very easy to move around. It's easy to roll and stuff. You can look up multiple examples. And then there's also this idea that there would be horses that knights would ride on, and they would, be hoisted up by a crane, but in actuality, it's totally different. I also liked during medieval time, it had several ideas, such as steampunk. It was this new, innovative ideas of like cannons and ballistas and wiring, or not wiring, but like ropes and pulleys, and they designed several little intricate pieces into it to make it such a cool thing. um and then they didn't even know very much about the science behind it either, but they figured it out. Like, it still surprises me the idea that we even invented a bow, because if you think about it, it has a lot to do with like tension and things, and like how would we even have discovered that, you know? Like, are people just running around, grabbing string and making it out of wood and crafting it in that certain way to see how it works? Or, did it have multiple iterations as well? And it probably did. It could have, they probably tested it on, trying to see if we could, use it as some sort of something that could hold stuff with, and then we could just, I don't know, it's just very interesting that some things came to be that shouldn't have been, but then there's also the ideas that some things that are as well are, I guess, vice versa in the way I said it, is that some things that are great that never came to be, but then some things that are also great that did come to be, but out of a very shallow area that we know about. But yeah, and then the other great idea of medieval times is the idea that it basically was this time where people were kind of accepting no matter where they were. They were just, of course, there was rebellions and plague and things like that, but I mean, even then, with that, I mean, it would have been like normal life if they saw the plague. If, another family member died because of it. I mean, that's very sad, but it would be a very natural thing that would have happened, and people kind of would have got used to it. And so they were just kind of accepting of these ideas, and they're just like, I don't know. It's very interesting, though. And then the fact that they came up with these clans and other things like knights and, several different tiers, I guess, of people. So it was like a king, and then it was like the archbishop, or it was the priest, or it was someone like their advisor to the king, or lords, and then it would go to knights, and then it'd go to like nobles, or I don't know. I can't say the order, but it had something like that. It had all this amazing stuff that a lot of people overlook for the more, I guess, idiotic thinking, where we thought, this would have worked because it has worked, and it, kept working. I think that's about all I can say about why I chose those themes. What can I say? Trying to think of several other things that I can talk about it. Because I do like where this can go. It's just the fact that how long will it take to get there? And it's also dependent on how much I put into it. So, I think what I can talk about is, I could talk about like the cave. That's also another thing that I like, is since it is a cave, it's very different from the natural, games, because games will be set out in the in like normal areas. It'll be like grassy plains and swamps and things. Well, in a cave, it is almost all the same no matter where you go. And it's very different from a lot of games, because I think the idea of light is a big thing, because it's not as easy, or it's easier to do it at light, so places don't get dark, and then you don't have to worry about changing it. So, and then there's also how people would have survived. How would they, have made it in the way of looking instead of, adapting or, changing, I guess, to make it where, they're dependent on other senses. I guess the idea that I like the idea of something where no matter how far you go, there's always going to be an end, because in my case, usually I don't like it whenever there's multiple options, because if you go down and then you see 2 paths. Well, then you go down the left path, and then there's 2 more paths. Well, no matter what, it's just gonna, let's just say it keeps going on infinitely. Well, there's not an end to it, so you can't really turn around and explore that area, and then that area, and then that area. But yeah, in a cave, there would always, like, have to be an end, whereas, and then it also makes more natural boundaries, too. That's another great thing about it, because the walls would be the boundaries. If you ever went out, then, that's about it. There's not much more. The other thing is, you could think about, like, the roughness of the ground. I have some ideas for how I could work around that. Just because there are people there are machines and things, so they aren't, just sitting and rotting there. They're actually trying to make a living of themselves, and they don't really want to go into, say, the normal world because of how bad it was or something. Which I can get. I actually have an explanation, but I also have both ways actually, so why they should and why they shouldn't. But yeah, most people are actually wanting to stay down there because, reasons up above, which it will explain. And then, as I said, I think I said this before, but I also like the idea of characters having, no matter what character or no matter what kind of like flora or fauna, I always like the idea of like how or where they came from. Like there's always going to be a backstory. You just have to pursue it. I don't like the idea where you know so limited information and that I'm going to rob it from you and that you have to go and look on it somewhere else. I like the idea that if you choose to go that way and find out more about a person and, you want to go and fight with them and I don't know, you want to save their daughter or something like that. Or, fight with them. I don't know, just something where it's interesting to know a bit more so it makes it, those tiny details all add up to bigger details. Which I like tiny details because it kind of makes the worlds feel alive. It makes them feel more realistic than when a world isn't. So, I guess I could say talk about technology and the way it's going in this world. So they're not so advanced where there's going to be like teleporters or something like that. I like the idea if it was steampunk that it would be about our time for how much they advanced, and then it would be like way back then when they, changed and they would actually have gone down the steampunk path, or I don't know. I do like the idea of other power sources. I kind of like that being the only one just because it makes it work rather than trying to say like, oh, why didn't we use this instead? But yeah, I think a lot of people also had to figure out ways around it too. Because I know there was these robots or whatnot that magicians made. Automatons, that's what they are, or something similar to that. Where it was tiny, like dolls basically, that would move and perform a function all based on gears, and it was all in a very tight space to also give it a stylish look. And I do like that idea. It basically limits you, but there's a point to where it has to limit you in order to make you think more or creative. It basically gets you outside of it and actually like explore in how you could make something out of nothing. So I do like that. I do like the idea of limiting some aspects. Um, I guess I'm gonna be finishing up pretty soon, so it is almost the end because I also don't want to end with just the what do you call it, the model just going on without anything, because then that also might be boring to some people because they might have not come for that, or some people might have, But what else? what is some big key factors that I said about the characters and their designs and stuff and their backstories? I guess I could talk about some of the outfits too. So I know I said some of this before as well, but the idea that people's backgrounds reflect how they look. So, like I said, Case is a blacksmith and, inventor. So basically she would have like an apron and she would have a hammer and utilities and stuff just on her so that, you're always ready for anything. You never know when a customer is going to tell you to make something totally different that's out of your league, but you're still going to try it anyways. But then you also have to have like eyewear or something to protect your eyes from, just tiny details that make sense over time. I do want to also do a lot more research on some key aspects on certain characters and other things, because I want to make sure that it fits and it makes sense for why things are. I want some differences between our world and this world and the way that designs are, just because I like the idea of intuitive thinking around, because in that world they wouldn't have, got cotton maybe because there isn't that much sunlight. They would have to make a different kind of crops, so they would make clothing out of that, and then that would make them different. I also think that there should be an idea of a artificial sort of sun in some caverns, which would be interesting as well, and it also helps with the lighting as well, which can also lead to crop growth, and those could be like the biggest cities as well, which is pretty interesting, or to me it's at least interesting. Also, I didn't even talk about the technology very much. I'll go back into that because I'm running out of things. So yeah, they're not so advanced in the way of teleporters and, remote controls, which they might have remote controls or something where they can control it autonomously, or like they can move it around with like wires or so. I like the idea of tubing to carry gas and stuff, so steam. I also like the idea of other gases that they can be used, because I don't want to limit it as well, entirely at least. I like the idea that there will be some sort of like building or base building to make your place or make your home or so, and you can basically do that anywhere. I guess I'll talk about the technology in the next one, but I guess I'll finish up on this. What I'm saying is, yeah, building in your houses and stuff, I like the idea that you can just, go out there, but then there's also a limiting factor where you shouldn't be able to just build anywhere, because then you could build bigger and bigger, and there should be areas, so I will think about that building part, because I do like the idea that there is a settling point and that there's always an area you gotta go to, and then there's always something there that's interesting or something happening that you actually care about, and so that you will be more developed into it. But yeah, I'll think about that. But as always, thank you for watching this. This is the ending of Lasera podcast number 4. I will be working on more models. I'm actually working on some clay sculptures too right now of some of the machines. I'm still writing, and then I'm working out some things in real life as well. So, alright, thank you, of course, as always. Oh wait, and then, yeah, if you're interested in working on this project, just ask me, in the comments or whatnot, and then if you want to do subtitles or anything like that, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. As always, though, thank you.